Flame caught the lower edge of Mira Stone's cave map before she could wrench it from the bronze brazier. At the center of the coronation hall, Dragon King Kael Arden held the parchment down with the iron tongs, while Royal Mine Lord Darius Vane watched the roots beneath the palace curl into ash. "Your appointment is ended," Kael said. "Your underground access is revoked. Construction will continue." Mira saw the last marked rescue passage blacken. "There are miners below that floor," she said, "and a sleeping dragon. Give me 1 hour to get them out." The first crack split the transparent stone beneath Kael's throne before he could answer. A second raced through the floor like lightning trapped in glass. Courtiers staggered back. Far below them, gold light widened inside the mountain until a colossal eye opened beneath the throne, its molten iris filling 3 floor panels. The black, vertical pupil contracted as another drilling vibration shuddered upward. Mira smelled scorched parchment and fresh mineral dust. The thing she had come to prevent was already awake. Vane recovered first. "An ancestral sign," he declared. The coronation drums disturbed it. Nothing proves mining reached the nest. Mira dropped beside the brazier, not in homage but to save what Kael had destroyed. She pressed the smoking fragments beneath her gloved palm. Heat bit a red line along her left wrist. Enough contour marks remained to show the forbidden stratum. Not enough remained to guide a rescue safely. Kael ordered the coronation stopped. Mira rose with the fragments against her burgundy coat. "Clear the palace. Every blast travels through that nest. I authorized work above the lower shelf. You authorized it after burning the only map that contradicted Vane." Another impact rolled beneath them. The eye did not turn toward anyone. It narrowed toward the vibration. Its silence proved danger, not guilt. "Seal the lower works," Kael said. Vane bowed. "My engineers will inspect the disturbance." "No," Mira said. "His engineers are the disturbance." Kael's signet hand closed around the tongs. The pale scar at his thumb whitened. "You no longer hold royal authority." "I never needed royal authority to recognize drilled stone." Vane signaled an attendant. 2 fingers toward the service stairs, then a closed fist. "Remove equipment, lock gates, clean the tunnels." Mira set her brass compass beside the nearest crack. Its needle trembled toward the palace construction shaft, not the coronation drums. Black gold dust pushed through the fissure and glittered across the pale floor. She caught it on the clean edge of a map fragment. The particles matched her field sample from the protected shelf, where copper-gold veins ran through stone shed from the dragon's outer nest. No approved tunnel came within 400 feet of it. Vane stepped forward. Contamination from her own samples. Mira folded the dust-marked fragment before he could touch it. "Then, independent inspectors can sample every drill housing before your men move them." Kael looked from the dust to the ashes in her arms. "What do you need?" "Evacuation. No blasting. Vane's office touches no drill, ledger, gate, or worker roster. I keep these fragments, and new evidence goes to independent custody." Vane called her map a fabrication, but Kael faced the fissure. Mira saw the pause in him, the old habit of weighing truth against the ease of command. "The palace will be evacuated," he said. "The lower blasts are suspended. You retain the fragments." "Not an admission. Not yet." Behind him, Vane's attendant slipped through the service door. Mira pointed to the black gold trail creeping from the crack toward the royal construction stairs. Fresh dust pulsed with each underground impact. "The lower equipment already touched the nest," she said. "If Vane's men reach it first, they will erase the trail." Another hidden drill struck stone. The pupil snapped narrow. A copper-gold fissure flared across the scarred lid, and the floor tilted beneath the abandoned throne. The evacuation would save the court. It would not save the miners, the records, or the route being destroyed. Mira turned toward the service stairs. "If you mean to repair what you did, keep your soldiers out of my way and stop that crew before I reach the shaft." She ran for the underground gates as fresh black gold dust burst through the floor behind her. The iron gates slammed shut before Mira reached the construction shaft. Through their bars, 3 miners were dragging a wheeled drill toward a wash channel while another emptied solvent across its housing. Black gold slurry streamed toward the drain. "Step away from that machine," Mira ordered. The foreman lifted Vane's stamped clearance. "Royal Mine Lord's safety protocol." Behind her, boots struck the stairs. Kael arrived with 6 guards, but Mira blocked his path before he could assume command. No soldiers inside until I establish custody. Their armor carries palace dust. Kael stopped. Open the gates, then follow Inspector Stone's instructions. Vane revoked her appointment, the foreman said. And I'm restoring her access, Kael replied, without placing her investigation under Crown control. The lock turned. Mira entered alone, wrapped her burned map fragments in clean linen, and sealed the bundle inside her parchment case. She marked the time across the wax with her brass compass point, then gave the foreman 6 unused glass vials. Scrape the drill housings, separate tools, separate vials, touch nothing else. He hesitated. My supplier contract requires Lord Vane's authorization. Then witness while I do it. The solvent had stripped the outer grime, but compacted dust remained beneath the rear coupling, where cleaning brushes could not reach. Mira loosened the plate with a borrowed wrench. Gold-black particles filled its grooves. Their metallic scent and copper-flecked fracture matched the protected samples she had collected months earlier from a natural vent above the dragon's nest. Kael watched from beyond the gate. Is it enough? Enough to compare. Not enough to accuse a man of ordering the drilling. She divided the material into 6 equal samples. 2 went to palace engineers chosen before Vane's appointment. 2 went to representatives from the Miners' Mutual Aid Council. 1 remained with her, and the last was sealed for an independent stone examiner outside Valedrake. Every witness pressed a numbered mark into the custody sheet. Vane entered as the final seal cooled. You are contaminating royal property, he said. Her quarry suppliers have already been instructed to refuse her materials, tools, and transport. Retaliation does not alter mineral composition, Mira answered. No, but eviction alters cooperation. His gaze passed over the worker representatives. Housing belongs to the mining office. Families who obstruct a royal safety review may find their leases reconsidered. Fear moved through the chamber more effectively than any guard. Kael removed his signet ring and pressed it beneath Mira's custody record. Lower drilling remains suspended. Worker housing and supplier access are protected pending independent review. Vane's office will issue no eviction, dismissal, or contract order connected to this inquiry. And the map? Mira asked. Kael met the watching workers rather than lowering his voice. I burned Mira Stone's original survey after accepting my Lord Vane's report without independent verification. That destruction is entered as a royal act and will be examined with the rest. The admission did not restore the rescue routes or cool the burn beneath her glove, but it made denial harder. By late afternoon, 2 independent comparisons returned. The dust embedded inside the drill couplings contained the same copper-gold mineral lattice, heat-darkened mica, and pressure-formed crystal pattern as Mira's protected field samples. The machines had reached the forbidden dragon nest stratum. Nothing in the result identified who had commanded them or where they had entered, but Vane's approved surveys were now physically impossible. Mira pinned the findings beside the gate, where workers could read them. Kael stood outside the marked evidence boundary. What comes next? He asked. The crew that operated those drills. A young mechanic approached carrying an oilcloth packet. His eyes kept returning to Vane's empty office doorway. Inside lay half a broken tungsten drill tooth, its fractured edge bright beneath old rock dust. It came from the sealed lower passage, he whispered. The other half is still in the machine. He placed the oilcloth packet in Mira's palm. Mira reached for a fresh evidence envelope. The mechanic caught her wrist. Not here. His housing clerk saw me leave. Before she could secure his statement, an evacuation bell rang from the workers' quarter. He fled through the supply corridor. When Mira reached his assigned building, his room stood open. His name had been scraped from the housing register, and his wife insisted he had never lived there. Mira closed her fingers around the mechanic's oilcloth packet as his wife shut the room door between them. 2 housing clerks were already coming down the corridor with removal notices. One carried a list of names. The other carried a pair of mine guards. Mira Stone, the senior clerk said, surrender stolen royal property. She slid the packet into her parchment case beside the sealed map fragments. Produce a custody order issued by someone outside Vane's office. The guards moved forward. Mira struck the stair bell twice the Mutual Aid Council's signal for witnesses and kept her back against the door. A royal runner reached the building before the guards did. From the courtyard, he read Kael's new order aloud. Every detention connected to the investigation was transferred beyond the mining officer's authority. The guards stopped. The clerks tore their list in half and fed it to the corridor stove. The mechanic's wife reopened the door only after worker representatives filled the hall. "He never lived here," she repeated loudly. Then, while pressing a blanket into Mira's arms, she whispered, "Old kiln shelter, the family's vein displaced last winter." Under 6 witnesses, Mira opened the packet, sealed the tooth in a numbered envelope, and recorded its source as unnamed pending independent protection. Kael arrived without guards. "Give me the mechanic's name, and I can protect him." "No, you can protect every worker Vane might suspect." He studied the frightened families, then granted the Mutual Aid Council control of temporary shelters and opened palace kitchens without registration. "No names go to my office," he said. For the first time, he had protected her process instead of his reputation. At dusk, Mira entered the abandoned kiln with 2 civilian inspectors. The mechanic crouched behind stacked fire brick among 12 displaced families. He offered a charcoal rubbing of the missing half. 4 surviving digits along the tooth's base matched the number he had copied before Vane's men replaced the drill head. "The machine is behind the sealed lower gate," he said. "Night crew only." "Who assigned you?" He looked toward the sleeping children. "If I testify now, they lose every roof." Mira left his name off the custody sheet. "Then the metal speaks first. You speak when protection does not depend on a king's promise." Before dawn, Vane posted a replacement inventory, declaring the numbered tooth obsolete and discarded 6 months earlier. He accused Mira of planting quarry refuse and ordered the lower drill dismantled for structural safety. Mira brought the sealed fragment and rubbing to the Royal Armoury Archive, but gave Kael no witness name. Vane changed the inventory because he knows which number matters. "I need the issue book that existed before his correction." Kael unlocked the archive and stepped aside. Civilian inspectors enter first. The original records leave under their seals. Dust lay thick on the bound tool ledger, but its pages were intact. Entry 4817 assigned the tungsten tooth to Lower Works Night Crew 9 under Vane's restricted works code. That crew appeared nowhere on the public register. The replacement inventory had changed both the number and the issue date. With worker representatives holding duplicate seals, Mira led the inspection to the lower gate. The drill inside had already been stripped of its identifying plate, but the remaining half-tooth was jammed in the coupling. Its fracture ridges locked into Mira's fragment line for line, and the alloy matched entry 4817's armory specification. The inspectors extracted and sealed the matching half, then lodged it with the Mutual Aid Council under a numbered custody mark. "This proves Vane's hidden night crew operated in the prohibited passage," Mira said. "It does not prove who ordered them there." Vane demanded the mechanic be detained for theft. Kael refused without asking where he was and permanently removed Vane's authority over workers held for questioning. Mira allowed Kael beside the evidence table, though not inside its custody line. As the inspectors copied the original ledger, Mira turned back 1 page to verify the sequence of issues. Night Crew 9 had received the drill tooth on a shift omitted from every public schedule. Beside the date was a ventilation bell time and a notation for explosive allotment. Mira knew the date before she finished reading it. It was the night her father had died in the collapse Kael's court had ruled unavoidable. If the ledger was true, the next proof would not be found in metal. It would be found in the clocks that had lied about the blast. Before sunrise, Vane's archivists were already carrying the oldest vibration clock out of the mine inquest room. Mira met them at the stairwell with 3 mutual aid witnesses and the original tool ledger under civilian seal. "Lord Vane ordered obsolete instruments destroyed," the archivist said. The brass clock's smoked glass drum preserved every tremor as a needle cut through soot. Its date plate matched the night Mira's father died. Mira laid her burned left wrist against the case to steady it. "Set it down." 1 man obeyed. The other swung an iron bar through the glass. Kael caught his second blow on a scabbard, but the first had shattered the drum. Vane appeared above them before the soot settled. "A grieving daughter has manufactured an inquiry around a broken antique." Mira did not touch the fragments. "Seal the room. Record every person inside. Then find the clocks beyond his custody." The capital had once synchronized 4 vibration clocks to the ventilation bells, 1 at the Royal Mine, 1 beneath the waterworks, 1 in the Stonecutter's Chapel, and 1 at the Eastern Airhouse. Vane controlled only the first. Mira chose not to chase its ruined evidence. We compare all 3 independent records, she told Kael. And not only my father's collapse. His expression tightened. That expands the inquiry to 12 years. That prevents you from clearing one dead man while leaving the system intact. After a moment, he turned to the civilian inspectors. Follow her scope. By midday, the surviving soot drums stood on separate felt cradles beneath worker seals. Mira aligned their ventilation bell marks with the explosive allotment in entry 4817. On the night her father died, all 3 needles recorded 2 hard shocks, 11 minutes before the official collapse alarm. The first was narrow and violent. The second carried the long, uneven drag of falling stone. She requested debris retained from the original inquest, and 2 later, natural collapses. A civic chemist, selected by the Workers' Council, found nitrate salts inside protected fractures and glassy heat pitting that pressure alone could not produce. Each debris case remained with its existing custodian. Only sealed scrapings crossed the evidence line. The clocks prove shocks occurred before the alarm, Mira said. The residue proves explosions caused those shocks. Together, they establish that 3 collapses were blasted and reported as natural. They do not identify who placed the charges or ordered them. Vane entered the chapel with copies of Mira's rejected appeals. He read aloud the passages where she had accused the court of burying her father twice, first in stone, then in paper. She decided the answer years ago, he told the witnesses. Now she is arranging damaged clocks to resemble grief. Mira's throat tightened, but she placed her father's case behind the other 2, then test the cases in an order I did not choose. The inspectors drew lots. The same pattern survived. Kael faced the gathered families. My court ruled Thomas Stone's death unavoidable and used that finding to deny an independent inquiry. That finding is withdrawn. The other 2 rulings are suspended. I accepted conclusions produced by the office now obstructing review. It was not an apology offered privately, where it cost him nothing. Nor was it forgiveness. When he offered royal funds, Mira refused treasury control. Kael transferred the money instead to the worker-appointed review council and surrendered approval over its spending. She accepted the release order, not his gratitude. Vane's final answer came before sunset. The compensation hall had been emptied of clerks, its claim ledgers removed, and every survivor's payment from the 3 blast dates frozen. A notice ordered affected families to appear individually at the mining office by noon. The mechanic's wife brought Mira the notice. If we report, he learns where everyone is hiding. If we do not, children lose food allotments tomorrow. Mira looked across the chapel at the sealed clocks, then at the families whose testimony Vane had converted into hunger. Move them before dawn, she said. We secure the missing compensation ledgers, and no claimant enters that office alone. Outside, wagons were already leaving the compensation courtyard with locked record chests. The first wagon reached the eastern bridge before dawn. Mira stepped into its path with the mechanic's wife on one side and 6 compensation claimants on the other. Behind them, mutual aid carts carried the displaced families toward shelters outside mining office control. The driver raised Vane's transfer warrant. These records are being moved for protection. Then protection can survive witnesses, Mira said. Open the first chest. Mine guards descended from the second wagon. Kael approached with royal soldiers, but Mira lifted one hand before either force crossed the bridge. No armed custody. If your soldiers seize those ledgers, Vane will call them altered by the crown. Kael halted his men and ordered both armed groups beyond the bridge markers. The records remain where Inspector Stone can examine them. Vane rode into the courtyard as worker representatives surrounded the wagons. Those chests contain private claims. She has no right to expose grieving families. Then let each claimant inspect only the page carrying their number, Mira said. Names remain covered. The first lock bore an intact mining office seal, but the wax was still warm. Inside, newly bound ledgers contained orderly entries copied in identical ink. Mira ran a gloved finger along the inner stitching. No dust had settled beneath the thread. Decoys, she said. Where are the books these replaced? Vane smiled. You demanded the compensation ledgers. There they are. Mira inspected the wagon floor. Black grit filled every seam except beneath the first chest, where 2 clean, rectangular shadows showed that heavier containers had rested there until recently. One wagon axle carried pale limestone mud from the palace road. The other was packed with reddish kiln clay. The original chests changed wagons at the compensation courtyard, she said. The decoys came here. The authentic records went toward the old kilns. Vane ordered the drivers detained for theft. Kael refused. At Mira's direction, civilian inspectors sealed the decoy books and both wagons separately. She did not pursue the kiln road with soldiers. Instead, the mechanic's wife led worker carts through the narrow laundry lanes, while Kael kept the public road blocked, preventing Vane's guards from following without openly violating the worker protection order. They found the missing chests inside an abandoned lime store near the kiln shelter. Clerks were feeding loose pages into a furnace. Displaced families had already smothered the flames with wet blankets. Mira entered with 2 civic archivists and 3 claimant witnesses. The clerks surrendered only after Kael publicly guaranteed that refusal to destroy records would not be prosecuted as disobedience. He remained outside while the archivists numbered every surviving book, ash bundle, torn page, and sealing cord. Heat had charred several covers, but the internal account sequences remained legible. Mira covered all names and compared claimant numbers against independently retained payment receipts. The official ledgers recorded full death compensation. The receipts showed families had received less than half. The missing amounts were transferred into ventilation relief accounts, controlled through restricted mining office codes. Beside several payments appeared cancellation marks dated 1 day after claimants had challenged the natural collapse rulings. The mechanic's wife identified her husband's claimant number among workers officially listed as relocated, although he had continued drilling underground for Vane's hidden night crew. Mira examined 3 more volumes. The same pattern connected erased housing entries, frozen food allotments, concealed night labor, and survivors pressured after each blasted collapse. This proves the compensation system was used to hide workers, divert payments, and punish challenges to false collapse rulings, she said. It does not prove who ordered the explosions. Vane seized upon the limit. Then you have proved accounting misconduct by dead clerks. No, Mira said. I have proved the misconduct continued yesterday. She placed his newly issued payment freeze notice beside the historical cancellation marks. The language, account codes, and reporting requirement were identical. Kael looked toward the waiting families. All compensation authority is removed from the mining office. The original ledgers remain with claimant-elected custodians, and every withheld payment will be restored from my coronation treasury without surrendering names. Mira accepted only after the council received control of distribution. As archivists secured the final chest, a scorched page loosened from its binding. Beneath the compensation, columns ran repeated delivery numbers for ventilation powder, far more explosive material than the public mine had received. Each shipment had entered through a gate that official maps said did not exist. The latest delivery was scheduled for that morning. The ventilation powder wagon arrived at the eastern freight yard beneath a canvas marked Foundation Lime. Mira watched from the weighhouse with 2 civic inspectors and 3 powder workers chosen by the Mutual Aid Council. Kael waited outside the yard, his soldiers posted far enough away that no driver could claim royal seizure. The scorched ledger page gave them a delivery number, not a road. Mira had ordered every mapped gate left open. If the driver altered course, the hidden entrance would identify itself. At the first junction, a mining clerk waved the wagon away from the public descent and handed the driver a fresh route slip. Flooding below, he announced, cargo returns to the North Magazine. Mira compared the slip with the delivery page through the weighhouse glass. The new destination used a public magazine code, but its wax carried no scale impression. Vane was rerouting the evidence before it crossed the concealed gate. Do not stop them, she told Kael. His jaw tightened. That wagon holds enough powder to bury a district. And if your soldiers seize it here, we prove only that powder existed. Empty the streets along both possible routes. Let civilian witnesses follow. Kael issued the evacuation without naming the wagon and surrendered command of the trailing carts to the powder workers. Mira rode in the first cart, keeping the cargo in sight, while inspectors recorded every turn and bell. The driver passed the North Magazine. Beyond the old kiln road, he halted beside an unbroken retaining wall. The clerk struck a ventilation bell in a sequence of 3, 2, then 3. Stone blocks withdrew inward, revealing iron rails descending beneath the palace ridge. Before anyone crossed, Mira fixed survey pins at the opening, measured the threshold with her brass compass, and took duplicate rubbings of the hidden lock. Worker witnesses signed both. One rubbing went to a civic inspector, the other went directly to the Mutual Aid Council. Vane rode up with mine guards before the wagon entered. "Emergency powder cannot remain exposed," he said. "Move it to the north magazine." "Your clerk already passed that magazine," Mira answered. The clerk tore the route slip and pushed one half toward a drain. A powder worker caught it beneath his boot. An inspector sealed both pieces separately. Vane raised a red flare. Inside the concealed passage, warning bells began ringing. A team farther below released a water gate. Mud surged up the rails, threatening to wash away wheel marks and flood the cargo. Mira ordered the wagon backed onto dry stone. The drivers obeyed her, not Vane. Workers chocked each wheel, covered the barrels, and diverted the first rush into empty lime trenches. Kael removed his coat and joined the sandbag line, only after Mira assigned him a place outside the evidence markers. When the water fell, she documented paired rail grooves, fresh tungsten scoring, and black gold stratum dust compacted beneath the wagon wheels. The hidden route joined the same prohibited passage, identified by the matched drill tooth. The powder workers opened 3 randomly chosen barrels beneath canvas screens. Each contained blasting powder, not lime. They weighed the contents on the freight yard scale, retained sealed samples, matched the barrel numbers to the scorched delivery page, and placed the wagon under council seal. Beneath the false lime labels, heat loosened older stencils bearing Vane's restricted ventilation code. Mira inspected the wagon's brake box. Inside lay a duplicate route book wrapped in oilskin. Its entries recorded 14 deliveries through the hidden gate, including powder sent before each of the 3 concealed blasts. The morning shipment was assigned to lower chamber 7, directly beneath the coronation hall. Inspectors sealed the book, while worker representatives retained numbered page rubbings. This proves the mining office maintained an unmapped gate and used it to deliver concealed explosives to prohibited lower works, Mira said. It connects today's cargo to the same route used before the false collapses. It still does not prove who ordered any blast. Kael faced the witnesses. The hidden gate will be held by the Workers' Council. No royal or mining officer enters without civilian authorization. Mira gave him a measured nod. He had not asked to hold the key. Then a powder worker lifted the final page of the route book. Unlike the earlier entries, the order for lower chamber 7 carried no delivery completion mark. It carried an ignition time. The time was 1 hour away. And beside it, in the space reserved for the firing crew, someone had written the protected mechanic's housing number. Mira covered the mechanic's housing number before anyone could copy it into an arrest order. "Record it as an unverified entry," she told the inspectors. "No name, no guilt." Vane pointed toward the kiln road. "The man is already a fugitive. The man is a protected witness," Kael said. "No officer approaches the shelters." Mira sent 2 council runners to move the mechanic and his family to separate guarded rooms, then required 12 Kaeline shelter residents to give independently timed statements. All placed him among them from dusk until the present hour. The statements established an alibi, not who had used his number. 48 minutes remained. The Workers' Council opened the hidden gate. Mira entered first with powder workers, civic inspectors, and a ventilation engineer. Kael followed without soldiers, and stopped whenever she fixed an evidence marker. Vane was denied entry after refusing to surrender the red flare he had used to signal the flood. Lower chamber 7 lay beyond the drilled nest stratum. Fresh support timbers disguised 18 charges packed into the foundation piers beneath the coronation hall. Copper firing wire joined them to a clock box bolted above the drainage channel. "Cut it," Kael said. "Not until we know whether cutting closes or fires the circuit." Mira made him evacuate the hall and the streets above, while the powder workers tested an isolated section. The device was fail deadly. Broken current would release a spring striker into the primer train. 35 minutes. Under canvas shields, the workers clamped the striker, removed the primer caps one by one, and lowered them into separate water jars. Inspectors numbered every jar. The charges remained in place until their positions, wire sequence, powder stamps, and distances from the piers were measured in duplicate. Only then were they removed into sand-lined boxes and transferred to council custody. The firing clock continued ticking after the last primer was safe. Mira opened its outer case without touching the inner mechanism. A brass worker plate had been inserted, where a firing officer's key should have rested. Its stamped number matched the mechanic's housing entry. A council runner returned with his wife. She recognized the plate immediately. The housing clerks took it when they erased his room. They said a man who never lived there could not own a work token. One inspector compared its clipped corner with the token outline recorded in the old housing register. Another examined the firing log. The plate had mechanically impressed the mechanic's number onto the clock strip at dawn. Someone had then copied that number by hand into the route book. This proves his seized identity plate was used to manufacture a firing record, Mira said. His alibi proves he did not insert it. Neither fact identifies who built the device or gave the final order. Vane shouted from beyond the gate that the wife had fabricated the story. Mira produced no private assurance. She requested the basket of property confiscated during the housing removals. Kael ordered it released directly to civilian inspectors. Inside were 27 worker plates bundled beneath unsigned mining office receipts. The mechanic's receipt remained, but his plate was missing. Its torn cord matched fibers trapped beneath the firing box latch. 21 minutes. The ventilation engineer traced the copper line upward. It did not end at the clock. A second circuit climbed through a narrow bore toward the coronation hall, allowing the charges to be fired remotely, even if the timed striker failed. Mira ordered the bore sealed only after its route had been surveyed. The line emerged behind the ceremonial bell frame above the royal dais. Kael stared at the exposed contact hidden inside the bell's mounting. "I was meant to ring that bell at noon and complete the circuit," Mira said. His coronation would have ignited the explosives, collapsed the hall into the prohibited works, and buried the evidence beneath a disaster bearing his own hand. Kael removed the ceremonial bell key from his neck and placed it on Mira's evidence cloth. "Take it." She did not accept personal surrender as proof. She had the inspectors seal the key, contact, wire ends, clock box, worker plate, and confiscation receipt separately. Then she examined the hidden contact. Its screws were new, but the bracket behind it was old. Scratched beneath 12 years of tarnish were 3 dates. They matched the 3 concealed blasts. Beside each date was the same palace authorization mark. The mark belonged to an emergency warrant Kael had renewed every year since his father's reign. Before anyone left the coronation hall, civic inspectors made duplicate rubbings of the palace authorization mark scratched into the old bell bracket and sealed them separately under worker observation. Mira would not let Kael authenticate the mark with his word. "If the Crown issued the warrant, the Crown cannot be its only witness," she said. Kael summoned the palace archivist, then ordered the emergency cabinet opened before civic inspectors, worker representatives, and the archivist's elected deputy. Vane arrived at the archive doors, claiming the warrant records were protected by royal privilege. Kael removed that defense himself. Privilege ends where it concealed dead workers. The archivist produced the original warrant, 12 annual renewals, the portable seal matrix, and its custody register. Each item received a separate number before the first ribbon was cut. The mark on the bell bracket matched the matrix in 3 chipped points no copyist could reproduce. So did impressions preserved on the historic ventilation orders. Mira read the warrant aloud. Kael's father had created it during a winter mine emergency. It allowed the mining office to open unregistered ventilation passages, requisition explosive powder, relocate workers without publishing their housing, and bypass ordinary structural review for 30 days. Every use required an incident docket, civilian inspection afterward, and a named firing order. None of those safeguards appeared in the annual summaries Kael had signed. "You renewed this 12 times?" Mira asked. "7, he said. "The first 5 bear my father's hand. And during your 7? I received 1-page assurances that the power remained necessary. I did not demand the incident dockets." Vane stepped forward. "The king has confessed. His signature authorized every action taken under the warrant." "No," Mira said. "His signature kept a dangerous power alive without review. That establishes responsibility. It does not establish that he selected a chamber, ordered a charge, or knew the warrant was being used for murder." Kael did not seize the distinction as absolution. "I renewed a weapon because examining it was inconvenient to the Crown. Record that before you record anything in my defense." Mira aligned the seal custody register with the route book, powder deliveries, vibration clock records, and compensation cancellations. Before each concealed blast, the mining office invoked the warrant, removed the portable matrix, opened an unregistered passage, drew excess powder, and confiscated worker identity plates. Afterward, it filed no incident docket and used the compensation system to erase the surviving crew. The current pattern was identical. The matrix had been removed yesterday, hours before the coronation attempt. Its register line named only a departmental courier code. Vane called that coincidence. Mira requested the cabinet's key ledger. The emergency cabinet required 2 keys, one held by the Crown and one by the mining chancellor. Kael's key had remained in the coronation treasury under 3 ceremonial witnesses. The withdrawal record showed it had never left, yet the lock bore fresh scratches around the royal channel. A civic locksmith made a wax cast beneath worker observation. Tool striations inside the lock matched a copied key, not Kael's original. The copied key had opened the royal half, while Vane's office possessed the lawful mining half. This proves someone used access available through the mining office and a counterfeit royal key, Mira said. It does not prove who held either key at the moment of entry. Vane demanded the matrix remain in palace custody because removing it would suspend emergency operations. Kael instead revoked the warrant publicly, surrendered his original key, and transferred the cabinet, matrix, renewals, and registers to the Civilian Review Council. You may collapse the mines by noon, Vane warned. Then the workers decide what remains open, Kael said. I will not preserve my throne by preserving this warrant. Mira accepted the transfer, not the sacrifice he wanted it to mean. While sealing the final renewal packet, the archivist found its thread had been cut and restitched. The packet index listed 4 missing firing orders, one for each concealed blast and one for that morning's failed ignition. Every order had been removed on the same night, 6 months earlier, and transferred to the sealed Hall of Claims. The authorization line named the official who received them. Before the archivist could read it aloud, the fire bell began ringing from the Hall of Claims. The fire had been set in the records vault, not the public hall. Mira heard the difference in the bells. The outer alarm rang steadily. The vault bell stopped after 2 strokes, as if someone had cut its wire. Keep the renewal packet here, she told the civilian council. 2 witnesses stay with it. No evidence runs toward a fire. Kael evacuated the Hall of Claims but kept his soldiers outside while worker fire crews took command. Vane demanded the roof cisterns be released. That would pulp every record below, Mira said. It would save the building. The building is stone. She pointed to smoke pouring from one window. Only 4 vault bays are burning. The claims keeper stumbled from a side door with scorched sleeves. She confirmed that no claimant remained inside. Minutes earlier, a mining office courier had presented an emergency destruction order and demanded entry to the firing order bays. When she refused, he struck her, took her keys, and locked the fire shutters open. Mira asked for the order. The keeper had pushed it into the brass return slot before confronting him. Civic inspectors opened the slot under worker observation and sealed the paper. It bore Vane's restricted counter-seal and ordered the destruction of obsolete ventilation claims before noon. Vane called the keeper confused by smoke. Then her statement is evidence to test, not a verdict, Mira said. The fire crews entered through the stone sorting corridor. Instead of flooding the vault, they dropped the internal sand gates, 1 bay at a time. Kael joined the bucket line outside the custody boundary. Following the keeper's directions, Mira reached the index wall, where stone tablets listed every sealed deposit independently of the papers inside. The archivist arrived with 2 witnesses and read the receiving line from the renewal index. Chancellor Orrin Vane had accepted all 4 firing orders 6 months earlier. The hall's carved accession numbers matched the missing order numbers exactly. A crash sounded behind the 4th shutter. The mining courier emerged through smoke carrying an iron document case. Worker firefighters stopped him before he crossed the marked threshold. He claimed he had rescued it. Its handle was wrapped in oilcloth, and a coal igniter remained inside his glove. Inspectors sealed both separately. The claimskeeper identified the case as holding the 4 disputed orders. Its outer lock was broken, but its fireproof inner packets remained intact. Inspectors opened each packet outside on numbered evidence cloths, continuously watched by the archivist, keeper, and worker representatives. The orders named the chamber, powder quantity, firing window, false alarm time, compensation, classification, and identities to be erased afterward. The 4th directed that the mechanic's confiscated plate be placed in the firing clock and that Kael's coronation bell complete the circuit. All 4 carried the genuine palace warrant impression and Vane's restricted counterseal. Vane said the counterseal had been copied. Mira tested that claim against its custody book, the wax on his current payment freeze notices, and the destruction order from the return slot. A hairline fracture crossed the same 3 letters in every impression. The fracture had developed 9 years earlier. Dated seal inspections showed it had never existed on authorized copies. The claims keeper produced her intake register. Vane had delivered the packets personally, refused to file the required incident dockets, and ordered her to classify them as closed royal claims. Her deputy's signature and the night porter's entry confirmed the date and time. The courier's route token matched the departmental code used to remove the portable warrant matrix yesterday. Mira arranged the human chain aloud. Vane controlled the lawful mining key and restricted counterseal. His office used the counterfeit royal key to obtain the warrant matrix. He personally deposited the 4 detailed firing orders. His powder route supplied every chamber. His compensation codes erased witnesses afterward, and his current destruction order targeted those packets. This proves Oren Vane authorized the 3 concealed blasts and this morning's attempted coronation explosion, she said. It proves he ordered the mechanic framed and the records destroyed. Kael did not command the arrest. He asked the Worker Council to execute its civilian warrant. Vane's own guards lowered their weapons as the council bound his hands. Then the claimskeeper opened the first order to its final page. Beneath Vane's command was the original structural objection that had delayed the first blast 12 years ago. The objection bore Mira's father's signature. Across it, under Vane's authenticated counterseal, was the instruction that destroyed his name. Dismiss as grief, unfit. Proceed before alarm. Before noon, civic inspectors photographed Mira's father's objection in place, recorded the page against the first order's accession number, and sealed the 4 firing orders in separate packets. The claimskeeper, archivist, and worker representatives signed across every closure. Only then did Mira carry copies into the coronation hall. The explosives were gone. The dais remained barred. Workers, displaced families, mechanics, civic judges, and palace clerks filled the pale stone floor, while Kael stood below the throne, uncrowned. Mira presented the chain without embellishment. The false maps, altered vibration clocks, hidden powder route, confiscated identity plates, compensation erasures, emergency warrant, copied royal key, 4 firing orders, and destruction attempt. Each conclusion was read beside its independent source and custodian. The mechanic was called first. The judges entered his shelter alibi, the seized plate, and the firing clock impression into the public record, then cleared him of every charge. His housing number was restored before his family, and the false fugitive notice was torn down by the clerk who had posted it. Mira placed her father's signed objection beneath the evidence lamp. 3 surviving engineers identified his notation system from archived surveys. The dated accession record proved Vane's office received it before the first blast. The civic bench formally withdrew the grief unfit finding, restored his professional standing, and ordered the correction engraved into the permanent structural register. Mira did not weep until the corrected entry was read aloud. Kael did not reach for her. He stood beside the families whose names his government had erased, and listened as everyone was restored. Vane received no royal trial and no private sentence. Before the civilian bench, the authenticated orders supported charges of murder, attempted mass killing, evidence destruction, unlawful confinement, identity falsification, and theft of compensation. He was remanded to worker-supervised custody pending a full public trial. The detained courier received separate counsel and judgment. Cooperation would not erase his acts, but Vane's guilt would not be used to predetermine another man's. Then repair began. The emergency warrant was abolished. The mining chancellery lost control of maps, powder, inspections, housing records, and compensation funds. Those powers were divided among elected worker councils, independent engineers, civic auditors, and family representatives. No sealed passage could reopen without published surveys and 2 civilian inspections. The palace treasury repaid every frozen claim with interest from the coronation reserve. Surviving erased workers recovered their names, homes, and trade status. Families of the dead received the wages Vane had hidden and seats on the permanent mine safety board. Kael signed each transfer publicly, but Mira rejected his first decree. It named her royal chief surveyor. A royal appointment can be withdrawn by the next frightened king, she said. He tore it in half. The replacement charter created an independent office of subterranean safety, funded beyond palace seizure, and removable only by a civilian vote. Mira accepted its elected directorship after the workers chose her. 7 weeks later, the coronation hall reopened without a coronation. The old dais had been dismantled. Through a glass panel in the floor, visitors could see the preserved section of false tunnel and the harmless bell circuit. Mira found Kael there after the final inspection, wearing no crown and carrying no order for her to approve. "The council votes next month on whether I remain king," he said. "I will accept its answer. And if you remain, I keep repairing what authority taught me not to see." He offered her the restored brass compass that Vane's guards had seized on the first day. Its bent hinge had been repaired, but the original scratches remained. Kael held it out without closing the distance between them. "I cannot ask you to forget what I did." "No," Mira said. "You cannot." His hand lowered slightly. She took the compass, then caught his scarred fingers before he withdrew them. "This is not forgiveness for one public confession," she said. "It is permission to walk with me while you earn what comes next." Hope crossed his face, quiet enough not to become a demand. "At your pace. At mine." They left the empty dais behind and walked toward the open doors, where workers were waiting for Mira's first safety report and Kael's next answer. Above the city, the ventilation bells rang not as alarms controlled by hidden men, but as public signals whose meaning everyone had been taught. This time, no one was buried beneath the truth.